Hello and welcome to the show. This is episode 112 of the Meet the Farmers podcast, and I'm your host, Ben Eagle. On the show today, I'm speaking to a Suffolk farmer just up the road from me. And this Suffolk farmer is also an award-winning conservationist. Since 2006, Graham Denny has had over 40,000 birds ringed on his farm. He farms 78 hectares, growing winter wheat for seed. He also undertakes a number of government trials, which I'm really interested to speak to him about today. Particularly interested to hear more about ELMs. And he also has some business lettings. Graham, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for coming on.
Nice to be asked, Ben. So yeah, well, nice to talk to someone from Essex as well.
Yeah, always. Oh, I was going to say, always a pleasure to speak to a Suffolk man. It's been. We were just talking before we started recording. Actually, it's been a really strange sort of a year. Not least, no Suffolk show. But how have you found things?
I think, yeah, in general for everybody, it's just been a funny year. I mean, for all farmers, we're all workers, so we haven't stopped. But just not seeing the people socially, it's just a different ball game, and so it has been hard. I think it's been tough on anybody, and lost my father at the beginning of the year, and that's made a bit of a tough year for not being able to see relatives and family friends, and not as much as we would like to anyway. But yeah, I think anybody who's here is grateful to be here, and we're now getting jabbed up, and hopefully normality starts soon, Ben.
Let's hope so. Tell me about the farm and how long you've been there.
Well, it's a family farm, like most small farms. We've been here since 1901, as far as I know. I'm the fourth generation. My son hopefully will be the fifth. It's always was a small dairy herd, and as time goes on, we've lost the dairy, and then we had pigs, we had fattening stock and fattening bullocks. They went a lot of chickens and things that my grandfather used to do. So it's all changed, and it's come down the houses that we used to grow sugar beet. We no longer do, and we're now down to wheat, and more conservation schemes are probably my break crops now.
Yeah. What sort of soil are you on where you are?
We're very quite rolling where we are. It's a quite little valley with the River Jordan running through the bottom of it.
Okay.
And so we've got some quite rolling clay hills. So there's some quite strong stuff because they're still there because the glaciers didn't move them. and at the bottom we've got some lovely deep soils, meadowland, but still in a floodplain. So yeah, it's good land if it's dry and you can get on with it, and it'll grow good wheat, no problem at all. It's not great for sugar beet, as a lot of my neighbours are finding at the moment, who've still got beet in the ground. It's like anything. Every farm's got a tough field and a nice field and an easy field, and we've got a bit for everything.
Where does your interest in wildlife come from? I know that it was your dad who really started the conservation work on the farm back in the 70s. I'm guessing he had a big influence on you.
Yeah, Dad definitely had a big influence, and that's probably coming through his love of shooting. So he was a shooting man, and there wasn't any hedgerows and things, and there wasn't any woodland, and he bought a couple of scrub areas which were osier beds, which that got reclaimed by the bank, and he bought them off the bank, and he just wanted to keep those for pheasants and the wildlife in them, and we put nest boxes up probably sort of in the 80s and things like that, and but he then said, well, we've got cover crop and a few yellow hammers, the sparrowhawks are knocking them about, we better get some hedges in, and we started putting a few hedges in under council grants back then, before any schemes had started, and we planted quite a lot of trees under council grants where we'd lost a lot of the elms to Dutch elm disease. He started putting a few bits and pieces back, and they still stand to this day, and they're good sized trees now, and we've just been added for the last few years through countryside stewardship. I've done 20 years of countryside stewardship. I've then done trials and things right through to now. So we started stewardship in '98, I think. So I've done quite a bit of wood and grant as well. just to tack onto them. So yeah, it's been ongoing, and I think and we've been sympathetic to hedges rather than murder them because we like to shoot, and we just know that what the partridge is like, everything likes. So hence why I think we'll be talking about later. We've got good numbers of turtle doves there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I want to actually spend a good deal of time tonight talking about conservation, but let's focus back on you for a bit and go back to your earlier life. You went to Otley College.
Yeah.
Tell me about your time there.
Yeah, great times. Made some good friends there who I'm still seeing today. And that was an enjoyable time. Done well, learned a little bit, I suppose, but very little about conservation in those days. It was more about what you was going to plough up. There was not a lot of Mintil being taught at the time I was there in sort of late 80s. So that was good times, and like I said, very good friends who I now still deal with. I deal most of my seed wheat is all my seed wheat is through Warren's seed at Framlingham, or else so I'm now. And Andrew Cooper, who runs that, is my friend. I went to college with him there, and my dad knew his father Keith. A lot of these, trust is a nice thing to have still in farming. You actually still trust merchants, and you can go to them and you think you're getting a fair deal, and that's very much how I like to operate.
Yeah. Away from farming, you've done a bit of building over the years. You've done a bit of game keeping, a bit of wildlife keeping as well. Tell me about all of that.
Everything.
Yeah, a bit of everything, really.
I think that's
a skilled man.
I think all farmers are skilled. We can all weld, we can all tinker, we can all do a bit of cladding, we can all do a bit of roofing because we have to, and as long as you can do it, you do it. And I think that with a small farm, I've been lucky enough to have to look at diversification before a lot of other people's have. Yeah. Whereas when I was diversifying, people with 500 acres probably weren't thinking much of it. Now they're thinking a lot of it. That's just a changing world. It's just that you've either got to be huge, or you're thinking of you've got to have some kind of diversification or some kind of contracting to keep yourself going. And luckily enough, I've got the skills to do the gamekeeping because it's what I did anyway. Yeah. And then I moved on from that. Someone asked me to come do a bit of building, which was obviously better money. They said, how do you go from farming to building and running 10 blokes on a site? I said, if you run a set of beaters on a shoe and they've had half a bottle of sloe gin into them, you can run anything at that point. So there's not a problem at all. So.
Let's turn towards conservation. So I mentioned in the intro that you've had over 40,000 birds ringed since 2006, most of which has been done by a guy who's local to you. Let's talk about ringing itself, because I don't think we've actually ever spoken about it on the podcast. How widespread is it? How long have you been ringing?
Well, yeah, it's not that well known a thing, I don't suppose, bird ringing. You obviously see a little bit on the TV, somebody's doing a little bit, but when you actually get down to it, there's not that many people ring. So to get your area covered, everybody says, oh, can you get your bird ringer to come and ring mine? And well, he probably hasn't got enough time to. And
yeah.
Most of them are voluntary guys. And John Walsh, who done the bird ringing at ours, was lucky enough, he came along and said, can I do a bit of bird ringing? You've got, some nice bits of osier bed, which my father had saved for conservation. And I said, yes. And then he happened to ask, have you got any yellowhammers? And yellowhammers at the time, sort of 2006, they're all saying, oh, they're in great decline. And I said, well, yeah, I've got hundreds of them. And he was quite a bit gobsmacked. And he went, no, you haven't. I said, I haven't. So I took him to a game cover crop and showed him where we've got a lovely hedge, which was one of these council grants that we put in. And most, if you look at any stewardship scheme, a hedge planting now is 4 to a staggered metre. We put 9 to a staggered metre in there, which the council grant allowed us to do. We also said, well, we want a bit of evergreen in there, and we actually put some leylandies in blocks to windbreak and stuff like that, which we take the tops out of and we leave them as a hedge, but they're very much in there, just to give that sort of a bit of shelter for the birds, because it's in an exposed area. And he went up there and he went, oh, you've got loads of yellow hammers. And he caught about 70 odd on the first day he went. And
Wow.
he says, well, he said, that's unbelievable, when he caught about 120 the first year.
Wow.
And we've always fed, so like most farms had, when we had a bin system, we had a dresser, we had the tailings coming out, and we used to use the tailings. We used to make tin shelters and feed under them for the partridges. But then I suppose all the little birds would then get a freebie at the same time, and that's where we managed to keep these good numbers for a start, and we've just supplementary fed ever since, and numbers have escalated, and they kind of all come here for their little winter break. So
Yeah, I imagine that ringers are pretty busy as they are, but I mean, if there's a farmer out there who is interested in having some ringing done on their farm, that they might not know where to start, who could they get in touch with?
if you contact all the bird ringing is done through BTO, so the British Trust of Ornithology. If you contact the BTO, they will let you know of people in your area, and hopefully put you in touch with a local ringer who might be able to come and do something. It's quite an expensive thing. So like if you're using a lot of rings you have to pay for. So as a ringer, you have to, if you was buying, there's different sorts. There's A rings, B rings for different size birds, for different size legs.
Yep.
Go right through up to like swans, obviously bigger rings, and owls, bigger rings. So these are all paid for separately. So like a B ring, which is your great tits, your yellow hammers, your chaffinches, that kind of size bird, for I think 500 rings is going to cost you about 150 quid, something like that.
Okay.
And you're not long getting through them if you've got a lot of birds. So
Yeah.
it's an expensive thing as well.
Right.
And then if you're feeding a lot, it's nice that we're getting a supplementary feed coming through CSS now. So it's quite costly. Then you've got to have nets and bits and pieces. You've got to have the time to do it, Ben, isn't it?
Absolutely.
It's another labour of love. What farmers we all love to see it being done.
Yeah.
And I'm training to do it, because there's just times when it'd be handy if I'd got it, if I come across to a nest of finding or something, so I can just put some rings on the like white throats or reed bunting. Just because that's easier, because I can't get people just to come and do it. So
yeah, I can see that. I want to talk about turtle doves, and especially Operation Turtle Dove. Figures from the BTO Breeding Bird Survey have shown quite significant declines since the 1970s. And why is it important that we focus on conservation of turtle doves?
Turtle doves in general are a big thing, because they've just declined by 97%, something like that. Yeah, to target on the turtle dove, we're doing it because that's the one in the greatest decline. But there's a lot of obviously red listed birds now. They're saying the yellow hammer. Some of that is old stuff, really, because I think because a lot of people are putting in the wildflower mixers, which have given places for birds to nest where they hadn't before, and where you're getting food from these the wild bird plots, and a lot of feeding going on. So I think in general things are just starting to come back, especially on a farmland bird survey. But just the turtle dove, it's a specific thing. They love farms, they love small farms, they love small mixed farms. And they're quite happy feeding it at your grain store, and it's the same with the sparrows and everything else. As we know, when you've got a mixed farm, you've got livestock, you've got spillage, you've got something for the birds to go on. If your animals have gone and you haven't got, grain assurance says shut your doors up, you very much probably haven't got enough food for them birds. You need to be out there feeding them.
Yeah.
And habitat wise, turtle doves love a big hedge. They like 3 meters plus height. They like brambles. They like climbing stuff in there to make a nest. I've always described a turtle dove's nest, if you haven't seen one, they're like a game of kaplunk. So basically, they'll be about 6 sticks one way, 6 sticks the other way, and that's the nest.
Okay.
And they'll build that in a day. And they might be laying on it in the next couple of days, and they'll put 2 white eggs on top of a few sticks. You can see from the bottom up the eggs, and you can see from the top down, you can see the eggs. If you touch it and the wind blows, you might lose the nest. So it's a very precarious structure. And at that point, it's just a good job that the turtle doves are very well camouflaged when they're in these sort of places. But finding that specific nest site is a hard thing to do. So for them, and they don't protect their nest like a wood pigeon will blow up its feathers and try and drive things away. A turtle dove, if there's something coming, it's not going to fight. Off it goes.
Right.
Builds another bad nest and has another go. So that's very much. So yeah, being a bit precarious, they are very, very open to predators. They're very open to jays, magpies, rats, stoats, everything, crows, grey squirrels, the whole 9 yards. So they do need a lot of looking after, which most shoots afford that safety.
Let's talk about government-led schemes. I mean, you mentioned you started with council schemes, but
yeah.
And you've pretty much been in every single scheme going, I'm guessing. So I'm really really interested in your perspective, going back from obviously current countryside stewardship, the environmental stewardship, the original countryside stewardship. What for you has worked well over those years, and what hasn't worked so well?
Yeah, like going back when we had like the council grants, you just got payment for trees, you put them in, and you looked after them. So you weren't really making anything out of it. It was something that you was doing. The council would grant it if they thought that the public could see or used it. So we had a nice ride of trees that we put in, which was beside a footpath. So the council granted that because people, going to walk alongside it, they're going to see it. And we done one of the first hedges we done. They said, well, we can see that from the road. That'll look nice. So we'll grant you those as well. So that was just money for something you was going to do. You put the labour in. They supplied the money for the trees and guards and whatever else. Moving on to stewardship grants. So we went in 98, we done stewardship and we done the woodland grant at the same time.
Okay.
And we done 3 little spinnies sort of within a sort of triangle and tried to join them up with hedgerows and pond creation and stuff like that. And that went in really well and looks good. And today, it's standing there now and it's doing a good job and it's holding the wildlife. And a very diverse amount of wildlife as well. A lot of birds. I mean, with the bird ringing, we've done over 70 different species on the farm. Wow. So, which is quite a lot for a very small farm. Yeah. But as you know, birds are constantly moving through. And if you get we have the snow the other day, you'll get birds from across the country coming through and back again, and winds will blow them up and down the country. So you quite often get a few oddments that probably won't be living there. We went from a straight countryside stewardship one to an HLS. So we've done a bit more intense work, and we was very lucky that those grants those days you had an advisor with them.
Yeah.
So there's 10-year agreements. You had an advisor, and when you could get hold of an advisor and ask advice, they're the schemes that work. So from there, Ben, we've done that. I'm now entering another mid-tier agreement, an arable agreement. I've only put the arable land in. I think I sent you the map. I put the whole farm in though, that's a big changer. That is. It's a big changer for me because I love farming as much. I love to see the combines. I love to go out. I love to be on a track. I love to be ploughing. Love to be doing anything with the farming. So, but I also love the conservation side of it.
Yeah. And
at the end of the day, it's looking at the pound, shilling, and pence, as they would say.
Absolutely.
What he's going to pay.
Absolutely.
Post the BPS dropout. And so as we look at that, I'm going to try something a little bit different and give the land a rest. I think we've probably all, like we said, we've all got stiff land and we've all got land that we think actually you ain't going to take any harm at all if you're into wildflowers for a year or two. That's not a bad thing. And trying to introduce more humus to the ground, chopping wildflowers down, I can just see going forward that I will give it a little break. And if I'm going to be paid to give it a break, then that's the way I'm going to go for 4 or 5 years, and then we just see what comes out with these ELMs in the future.
Let's go on to that, because I'm really, really pleased to have you on here for this reason in particular. But so you've been taking part in, I think it's the only arable pilot of ELMs to have been going on since 2017. What's your perspective, and what have you been doing since that time?
Well, the RBAPS, which is results-based agri payment scheme.
Another great acronym for agriculture.
So is doing the schemes in a different way. A lot of these HLS and countryside stewardship have been on the back burner because we're now looking at public money for public goods.
Yep.
And that coming across from DEFRA, Natural England, and rural payment is, right, you're paid £600 to grow a bit of AB9. You're going to put it in the ground. You're going to drill it when you feel like it. When you've done everything else, you're probably going to leave it to the last minute. Then you're going to think, oh, it's a bit too dry. Then you go, well, we'll just chuck a bit of mustard at it and see what happens, and that'll do. And at that point, you still get paid. So, and there you're getting when you people are checking, they're going, is this good for nature? Are we achieving the best thing we have by just giving the farmer a lump of money? Who's, well, I've been paid. Shall I give that 80 units, or should I give it 40? Shall I give anything? Looks all right, And this is where Natural England are looking at, and rightly so, because some people do it properly, some people don't. Some people have a bad year on it, and sometimes you have a good crop. Sometimes you get the rains, sometimes you don't. I'm sure if there's people on light land who have said, well, that's only the old stewardship agreement, we're not going to irrigate that, we better put it on the taters, that's going to make a bit more money.
Yeah.
And we all get that, we know where it is. And so the new take on this is, right, if you're going to grow something, treat it like any crop. We'll pay you better for it. We'll pay you something up there. I mean, at the moment, I'm growing wildflowers and getting 715 a hectare, and I'm getting £860 a hectare for a wild bird cover.
Okay,
which is good money.
Okay.
And I know as part of the trial, this is where they're looking at going to ELMs.
Right.
But if I fail, I don't get that payment.
Right. Okay. That was one of my questions.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And how do they? What does failure mean? What is failure?
There's various. If you get, they want you to get a diverse mix. So they're looking at a 6-way mix. If you're in, let's say we're in growing a wild bird cover, they're saying they'll give you like a list of a mix of things that you can grow. Then it's totally up to you. Your mix, you do what you want to do. So they've just left it basically to us. So let's, for instance, say, to count, if you do a metre square, we have to do 10 metre squares across the plot. And of those plots, you have a tick box. And so if I grow cereal, I have to have 25 cereal heads in a metre.
Okay.
Which is not a lot, really.
Yeah.
That would class as one. If I had red millet, I would need 4 sprays of millet to count as one. I would need 4 sprays of white millet, because obviously they drop seeds different times. That'd be another thing. 1 sunflower, 1 fodder radish, because they're really big, bushy. I think 4 mustards, 7 heads of gold of pleasure, that kind of thing.
Okay.
And so it goes. So you're trying to grow a mix, and you're trying to achieve a good headage of seed there, and they can see the seed is there, and it's going to be there for the birds for the winter. It sounds a bit fiddly. At the end of the day, if you drill probably any mix supplied by your Warren's, Oak Bank, anything like that, you've done it.
Yeah.
You've done it before. Sorghum's not going to count as anything, because it's obviously not a seed bearer. You can put maize in it and sorghum in it as scaffold, and there are no problems with that, but you've still got to achieve your seed of the millets and the mustards and that kind of thing. So you've got that. If I fail with the millets, I can chop it up with, put mustard in and maybe fodder radish later on with a spreader, and maybe get something in there. You can put rape in it at different times. It's got different ways of growing it, and but the idea is that we've got to produce the goods.
Yeah, because I mean, what about if you get a year like last year, when you have a very wet winter and you get through to like May, and then you're into a very dry spell, but you're drilling in May, and then nothing takes. What happens then?
Well, you've got to look at it again. Are you going to re-drill, or where are you going to go from that? So you're probably like, you can put mustard in quite late, you can put fodder radish in quite late. but it's got to still have a viable seed pod come October, September, October. And this is where looking at it to get the maximum amount. If you grow, let's say, if you have 3 viable, you'll be on your base payment. So you're probably with 3 viables, you'll probably be on 450 a hectare. And there's no safety net. So if you just got 3 viable, if you're counting within your 10 squares, I think it's half your squares have got what you want. You could get a payment, and then 4 is an upper payment, 5 is upper payment, and 6 is top payment. So if you've got 6 of the seed bearing plants within those 10 square meter plots, then you'll get your full payment. And it's very doable, Ben. It's very doable. People shouldn't be afraid of it. And at the end of the day, it still is a crop. With each meter square we do a quick count, we take a picture on a phone, and then we would send that in and submit that, and that would be us. So we'd be self-testing it as well.
Okay. Yeah. So, I mean, assuming that the ELMs, certainly the arable options for ELMs, go along this results, payments by results model, but having done it, your message to other farmers would be what?
Don't be scared to go down that route if this where they're going to go. So as long as they keep the payment up without, with still with it, there's still an awful lot of we've been saying with all the schemes, red tape is the worst problem that we're getting, and stipulations from the RPA. So as long as it comes up that you're growing a crop for this, and this is how you're going to be tested, I don't see there being a problem. We did ask for them to say, well, can we have costs for money for costs forgone? So if we're going to go seed and everything else, and we get a failure, will we still get a payment? And they were looking into that, and I'm not quite sure where they are with that. They're still in the hands of DEFRA and everybody else.
We're now going to move on to the part of the show where we talk about bigger issues in the industry. What for you are some of the biggest challenges that ag's going to face over the next 10 years, would you say? And there are quite a few, but what would you put at the top of your list?
Really don't know where to start, Ben, really.
I mean, dare I say, what you've been talking about for the last 10 minutes is probably enough.
Yeah, I think public perception of us is my biggest thing, and the fact that I don't think anybody appreciates where the food comes from, probably not even ourselves sometimes, and where it's gone, and I just think that going forward, if we can get back the general public to look at us and say, look, we try our hardest to give you the best quality food, support us and get that. And I know an awful lot of them do. There's still an awful lot that don't, and just getting people on board with what the countryside's about. And as we tend to be now, be getting more and more overpopulated. I imagine yourselves, as we're getting everything getting pushed out of London, and we're getting more and more people come there. I just have to tell people this is not Regent's Park or Hyde Park. You can't just let your dogs off and they roar around. There are other things that live here as well. So yeah, just getting some common ground with people who are arriving, and hopefully they'll go to that local butcher, go to that local baker, and support British farming and the industry that we all love. That would go, if we can do that. I can't see there being a problem for farming, and I can see us doing the nature and the wildlife stuff. That will pull a lot of acres out, and maybe people are just going to have to pay a little bit more for the food. Now, whether they'll want to do that is another thing.
Absolutely.
But hopefully it's got to come, and hopefully that they'll understand that the best quality stuff that you're going to eat is the stuff that's produced in this country.
What are you most looking forward to, I suppose, over the next 10 years? And that could be on your own farm, or more broadly. Doesn't need to be to do with farming either, if you don't want to. End of lockdown might be one.
That'd be great. And I think it's interesting moving forward. And I've been watching a lot of seminars. My nephew Ethan now works for Oakbanks, and they're good lads. And just looking at the soils and looking at things and being prepared to listen to people about the soils and what we've got to do. You know, the thing is, we've been penny pinching for years, trying to keep it all together with, you know, with the big machinery and the extra cultivations, and now we've just got to look at things an awful lot different, I feel. Yeah. And yeah, I don't know where it's going. So it's going to be some challenges ahead, but just I don't know that Mintill's got all the answers. I'm pretty sure it hasn't. And doing the seminars and looking at reading the books and reading all the literature that we're getting about these things, we don't know what's going to suit ourselves either, do we, Benny? You know, it's different for a heavy land.
It's different for everyone, isn't it? Yeah.
And I don't know where this net zero is going to come from or how it's going to get here. It's a bit of a learning curve, I think, for everybody.
I was going to say, there is a whole rabbit hole that I didn't want to go down tonight, but I'm going to avoid temptation for that one. But let's just finish and return on your farm. So over the next sort of period of time, is there anything new or different that you want to do, or are you going to be doing? Is it going to be business as usual?
Being I've now took out this mid-tier, and the whole of the arable will become flowers and scheme. I'm still doing the ELMs scheme. I might be doing the ELMs pilot if I get selected. So I'm just working my way through it really, and just seeing where I go. I mean, yeah. At the moment, if after this year of wheat, there will be only, I think, 6 hectares of wheat grown on the farm.
Yeah.
For 5 years, so that'll be a bit different. That's a big change. I mean, there's hardly any chemical, hardly any fertilizer going on. You know, it's a change for me. I've got a grain store I can rent out. Grain assurance, trying to have that. Hey.
Shall I edit that out? No, I'll leave it in.
Keep it in. There's been money for old rope for people for years. Just going forward, if I can make a living from the land just in a different way, then I'm happy to do that. And whether I will turn around to livestock or whether I will have 2-legged livestock, because everybody seems to want to come and see the turtle doves.
Yep.
And they will pay to do so. So if I look after them, maybe I'll be earning me money from, twitchers or whatever. Mm-hmm. Love photographers. They love to come and see the hares. They love to see the deer, bits and pieces. I don't know, Ben. It's just, it's like most small farmers. You diversify before you'll do diversify again. You just go, I can see a pound in that. I'm going to go after that pound.
Yeah, it's a mindset thing. We always finish the show with the same 2 questions. The first is, if you have a message for the public, what would it be? We
love to see people in the country. So I love to see people in the country. So I love to see them enjoying it. I love to be asked questions about the farmland. I love to be, if they tell me, don't ever be afraid to approach farmers, I don't think, and especially to ask the way, because we like that. And if you're, and if you are in the countryside, if you just respect that, you'll never have a problem from a farmer. So, and I just think to most of the people who have been walking through lockdown, I think it's probably brought it home that lockdown, that the people need that space. They need to walk about. There's obviously a lot more people about than what the countryside has probably seen before. If they just stay to the footpaths and respect that, and just take heed of what people say, then we're more than happy to see them.
And finally, a message for farmers.
For farmers, well, I'll probably say, as I reiterate what I've said earlier, that doing the schemes and working with Natural England, I know we've all had run-ins with RPA, and we know where you can be chased up for this, chased up for that. And
we love you, really, RPA.
We do really love RPA. They probably don't love me, things I say on Twitter. But at the end of the day, I just think that some of these schemes, I think if you take the bull by the horns, get stuck into one. For a lot of people who are now going to take field corners out, square their operations up, just farm that best land and square that up, you're going to actually see, well, why didn't we do that years ago? And I think that, although there'll be teething problems, if you can do that in the next year or so, while you've still got a little bit of BPS, you'll cover yourself. And I think once you're in it, and we're all in it, we've all got a bit of a voice. Then we can probably, gang up and have a bit more of a say about how things are run. And I'm sure that the NFU would hopefully do something with that and help us sort some of these out. We've been trying for long enough, but that's why I'm doing schemes. I'm working with Natural England, I'm working with DEFRA, I'm working with RPA to try and steer it in the right direction where I think it should go and how I want it to be. And then, hopefully going forward, there'll be a little bit better take up. And especially for some of the smaller farms, because I know that we get bogged down in paperwork, and especially if you're a one-man band or something like that, you've not really got anybody to turn to. And that's why like we were saying earlier, it was lovely when there was an advisor, someone you could turn to. And I think hopefully we've been asking for that back again, that there is going to be somebody on the end of that phone who could just answer a question. And that just, for everybody's state of mind, you can't be waiting for a phone call all day, even if you are on a mobile. That just doesn't happen there. So I'm just hoping going forward that things are going to get a little bit better, and there's going to be a little bit more leeway for conservation schemes going forward, because everything will benefit from that, even our own well-being. So that's probably all I can really say to anybody who knows me. They know that I live and breathe it, and hopefully if anybody wants to come to the farm and visit when this lockdown's out, we'll probably be doing a farm walk or two, and we see where we go from there.
Well, I'm sure you'll have plenty of people queuing up for that. Graham, thank you so much for coming on the show. Honestly, it's been a real pleasure having you. It's been great to get your perspective from someone who I knew before, but I now know even more. Just quite how much you've done, and just so I really appreciate your perspective. Thank you.
No problem at all. Thanks very much, Ben.
Brilliant. Thank you for listening. Next time we're talking dairy. I'm heading to Wales, and I'll be speaking to Abby Reader. So I hope you can join me then. But until then, have a great week, and I'll see you next time.